welcome to the channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. Now this is the first ever modding video that I am putting out on YouTube, and the mod in question is on the SteelDive SD1975, aka the Tuna. Now I'm going to do a dial mod, so a very simple mod, nothing too extensive. So please sit back, enjoy, and I'll talk you through what I've done. So now obviously I've removed the case back, and case back off. In order to remove the crown, you need to press that little lever right where you see that little dimple. You need to press it really lightly. It doesn't need a lot of pressure. However, once pressed, that will release the crown and the stem, like so. Now I'm just using a bracelet push pin tool. You can also use those spring bar removal tools. Now once that's removed, your next step is to remove the movement. Now right where I'm pressing with that spring bar tool, you can just gently lift, and that will lift the movement, and there's no need for any unnecessary shimming around with a pair of tweezers. Once the movement's out, just flip it over. You can put it on your hand, and the case, I've put it flat on a surface which will prevent from any dust going in underneath. So I'm using a standard movement holder, and you can just place the dial movement in there. Now at this point you need to reinsert the crown. A little point when you reinsert the crown, you need to be gentle, rotate it, and just push as you do it. And before you remove the hands, it's always a good idea to set them to 12 o'clock. So hack the movement, set your time to 12. Some people do AM, some people do PM. I usually like to do PM. I just find, for me, the alignment of the hands is just slightly better. Now I'm just using a little piece of plastic, a little plastic pouch as protection against these hand prying tools. Once that's removed, you can just gently tip the movement to the side in the holder, so the hands just sit on a soft surface. You want to prevent damage to any of the parts because you can reuse those on a different watch. So I'll put a little note there. Remember what the date is. Date is 14th for this mod. What I mean by date, not the actual day, the date showing on the actual watch. So you'll see two little slots just under the dial, and what you want to do is just gently put a screwdriver in there and just turn the screwdriver, lift off the dial. The dial feet on these dials are quite fragile and you don't want to snap one. However, if you do break one, it's not the end of the world. This is the dial I'm going to be using, and I got this from Nafokies, so I'll leave his details in the description of this video. Good guy, straightforward, and I get relatively good shipping. So the dials that you get from Mr. Nafokies, they have the dial feet are for the 3 o'clock crowns and the 350. However, the dial from the SteelDive Tuna is a 4 PM crown. So you've got a slight difference. However, it's not an issue. All we've got to do is chop all of the dial feet. So we just use a pair of snips and cut close to the base and just remove those. If you leave a slight little stump, you can use a diamond file just to file it down. Just be careful not to damage the dial. So once you've removed all 4 feet, now you don't need to remove them for every watch. There's some watches where with the 350 crown that will fit. You just have to chop off the dial feet for the 3 PM crown. So once you've done that, now you need to stick this dial to the actual movement, the plastic movement holder ring. So the way I do that is, you can either use adhesive dial dots, you can use these little strips. I'm just using some double-sided tape, and I cut them into little slithers, little batons, roughly 2 to 3 mil long and just about a mil wide. Basically, you just need to fit the plastic ring around your movement. And this is how I apply it. It can be quite fiddly, but you get used to it pretty quick. Now I'm just using the spring bar tool to press the double-sided tape down, and I've applied 4. You can apply 5, 6. Generally 4 is okay. You just got to space them out. Ideally you'd add one more at the 2 PM just to make sure the dial doesn't move around too much. You can just peel the top side of the double-sided tape off using the springboard tool. Just be gentle not to slip and catch the date disc. You could scratch that. I mean, these are small, delicate things, so you need to keep a steady hand. I have damaged many things over my the watches that I've modded, so just be careful when you're doing that. So once that's off, just make sure the double-sided tape is not stuck to any to the date window at all. So now this is why you need to remember the date, because you need to align the dial. So the date was 14. Now you just want to center the date to the date window, and once it's on, just press down. Use the date window as a gauge, and then everything else should sort of fall into place. Now remember, not all aftermarket dials are the same. There are some poor quality, some really good quality. The ones from the Nafokies, they are very good, so they do align up without any problem. So now you've centered the date within the date frame. Just press down on the dial. Just make sure it's not moving around too much. You will have a slight bit of movement, which is okay. It just allows you to adjust it before you put the movement back into the watch. Blue tack, man's best friend when it comes to modding. So just use a blue tack to pick up the hands. You need to work on a soft surface. This is a silicone sort of desk pad that I got from eBay, sorry, but you can get them at AliExpress. So anything drops, falls, is usually a minor. You won't cause any damage. So just gently lift the hands, center it, and I use hand press tools, which are just single pieces. A lot of videos will show you that jig that you can use. I just prefer this. Saves a bit of space on the table. Second point about modding watches, you want to keep it clean as possible, so that's why I'm wiping down the end of those tools to make sure there's no smudge marks onto the hands. Once that's in, just gently press it on. All hands are different. Some hands are thicker. These MM300 hands that I'm using, they're from the SteelDive Marine Master. Now they are very thick, very well made hands, I must say. So the thickness gives you a different problem, especially when it comes to the minute hand. It doesn't sit on too well. You have to be really gentle with it. It does take a few tries just to get it to sit. Don't lose patience, don't get frustrated, you might end up causing damage. So just gently press down until it's flat and pressed in. The hour hand, generally you don't get much problems with the hour hand. You're just going to make sure once it's on, that is sitting level and straight and it's not tilted at its axis at any point. So now minute hand on, and you just want to center it. It is going to be a bit fiddly, especially if the first time you're doing it. It's going to be a nightmare. Don't be surprised if you break out into sweats trying to get it done. My first couple of times were absolute nightmares. Now minute hand on, just make sure it's centered. If you are a modder and you have modded the NH35s, when you do your hour and minute hand, you can see just the top of the pinion poking out, and that allows you to correctly gauge where it is, and then you can just apply the second hand. With these hands, because they're a lot thicker, the pinion is below the hands, so it doesn't stick out of the dial. So there's a few trial and error moments where you just press down but it actually hasn't pressed onto anything, so you just got to carefully remove the hand again and keep trying till you get it on. It's always good practice, as you can see there. I've set the time to 6 o'clock. Before you put the second hand on, just go around all the hours, all the markers, just to make sure your hands are hitting more or less everything pretty accurately. If not, just remove and readjust. So this second hand, if I had recorded it, the whole, whatever I went through, we'd be here for another half an hour. But yeah, use a jeweler's loop if you have one. It allows you to see that little pinion. So this took me a few attempts, I'm not going to lie. Once it's in, once you see it, you should be able to press it on. So that's done. Release the crown. Check everything out at this point. You also want to use what I'm using there, the little air blower. You want to make sure the dial's clean, free from any dirt, debris, any bits of fluff or anything like that. And then check the movement, check the date. This works correctly. check the hands don't touch each other. There's no crossovers where it's going to stop one of the hands working. Once you're happy with everything, just remove it out of the movement holder. Now you need to remove the crown and stem before you install it back into the case. I have my own little special technique, but you can put it back into the movement holder, just being careful not to scratch the dial. Press down on that lever and remove. Now you need to place the dial and movement down onto a coaster or those padded watch movement holder cushions, sorry. I personally prefer to use my coaster. It is a bit slippery, so I'd prefer something with that PV, that PU leather, and that just prevents it from slipping off. Now just simply press the case back on. Now the fact that the case has been sitting the bottom end exposed, but it's been sitting on a table, that has prevented any dust getting in, so you don't have to worry about doing a lengthy cleanup of the inside of the crystal. Once you've got it in, you want to line it up to the hole where the stem will come through to make sure it's quite even, and then just press lightly on the back of the watch while you press from around the sides. So pay attention here, you only want to press the plastic ring, push it down gently but firm to make sure it is properly inserted, and you can turn it around, check the dial to make sure there's any gaps under the chapter ring and the dial. Once that's in, reinsert your crown, gently does it, and then you should be good to go. Put your case back on, and then we should be able to see if everything is aligned. Again, perform another test to make sure everything works, nothing's fallen off, and it is functioning like it should. So I turned it around, the alignment was good. I didn't need to open this again, thankfully. And now with the case back, it's just a case of screwing it back on. And there you have it, modified SteelDive SD1975. Just going through all the functions to make sure, yes, it is correct. Something might work, or you might have an intermittent problem that you don't know about, so it does need quite a bit of testing. And there is the final product. Looks very OEM, and this is what I love about modding. I love to do stock OEM style modifications. So this just looks like the real deal, but obviously it's not. Effectively using a replica dial on a homage watch, and you're creating a Seiko replica. So once that's all done, it's all been completed, you're happy with your end result, leave it running for a while. Just sit on it, not literally, just have it in the wrist, just so you know everything is okay with it. So I spun those hands quite fast. I was checking to see if any of the hands come off. No hands came off, so in my opinion that is good to go. Now I want to try something here. I did remove the shroud of the Tuna to see what a shroudless Tuna looks like. Looks pretty decent, it does take a lot of that diameter off. Obviously it removes that thickness of the watch, and it gives it a slightly different appearance, a lot slimmer of a profile, but it depends what you like. You wouldn't be looking to buy a Tuna if you were after a slim profile in the first place. But it's a funky little mod, removing the bezel shroud, something different. So once I'm done playing with the bezel here, we'll go look at that. Before that, let's just check out the loom. So we've got full BGW9 loom on the dial, hands, and the bezel insert. I think that looks pretty cool. And of course with SteelDive you do have that awesome level of loom, and you can check out the loom on the dial from Nafokies. So here's the Tuna without the shroud. I think you'll agree it does look pretty funky. Overall I'm very happy with how the mod looks with the dial, and how everything lines up with the chapter ring and the 12 o'clock marker on the bezel insert. Looks awesome on the wrist. Very, very stock looking mod. Of course, it needs to be said, it is a Seiko. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you on my next video.